Today I'm going to show you how to make this character. This is Tabby the Tiny Terror, a character that I'm making for a board game. The game uses these characters that I 3D modeled in Nomad Sculpt and printed on a resin printer. You place magnetic tiles together to build out the game board, and then you place the characters on those hexagon pieces. You take turns using abilities special to each character, trying to take out all of your opponent's characters. If you want to know when the game is available, go to whimsicalwarfare.com and sign up for the newsletter. Let's go ahead and jump into this sculpt. The first thing I'm going to do is click this tool icon to collapse the menu so that I can just easily see all my tools. I'm going to go ahead and click this landscape photo, and this is where we can get our reference image. I'll tick the box to turn it on, and then I'm going to click on the image and I'm going to import. Import from photos, and I will go ahead and select my image. I'm going to upload this to the Patreon post so that you can also use this image. And I will also go ahead and upload the finished sculpt when we are done. Just to get into our current setup so your sculpt can look like mine, if you go into the lighting menu, make sure you're on a lit PBR lighting, not a matte cap, and you can change your environment to this one right here. Let's start by making the cat's face. I'm going to start finding the darkest color of the skin, so I'll click the paintbrush and click the eyedropper tool, and then I'm just going to tap and hold. Sometimes it doesn't work. I need to go back in and do it a second time, and then it'll start working. And then I'm just going to find that darkest color orange, and I will go back into the paintbrush menu, and I'm going to click paint all. Make sure that your roughness is not too high or too low. The lower it is, the shinier it is, and the higher it is, the more matte it is. We want just a little bit of shine, not too much at all. The first tool we will use is the move tool, and we're going to use a fairly big brush size. You can see how big that is, and then not too high of an intensity, maybe 10%. And we're going to look at the bottom of the cheeks and the general shape of the head, and we're going to try to mimic that. Snapping to a front view, I'm going to grab the bottom and pull out this edges of the cheek, and then maybe I will push in the bottom of the head to mimic that shape. We can look from more of a back angle and just make sure things are lining up and the head is fairly rounded. And snapping to a side view, you can see the front of the face. We're going to flatten that off just a little so that it's not so completely rounded. Now, so we can get more information about the face, I'm going to use the brush tool with the subtract option. And very lightly, I'm only on 2%, I'm going to lightly subtract where I think the eyes are going to go, and we can move that around later if we need to. For now, let's go into the scene menu, this icon here, click the add button, and we're going to add another sphere. This is going to work as the eyes. This is called the gizmo tool. We're going to use this outer band to scale this shape down. We're going to use this arrow to move it forward and the other arrows to move it into position. When you add in a new shape, it comes in unvalidated and you'll have a menu at the top. Sometimes that menu doesn't show when you're on the gizmo tool. To get your unvalidated shape to show back up with that menu, click the tube icon in the corner and then you can see that menu. With that menu, we will click the mirror button so that shows up on both sides. We're going to click the paintbrush again on this new shape. We're going to click the color and we're going to make the eyes completely black. And we actually want these to be all the way glossy. So we'll turn roughness all the way down and click paint all. Now we have more to go off of, so I can see the distance between the eyes and I can judge if that nose bridge is wide enough. I don't think it's quite wide enough, so I'm going to move the eyes ever so slightly more over and scale them down just a little bit. For the mouth, we're going to use the mask tool and we're going to try to draw the general shape of the mouth, paying attention to where it is relative to the eyes and also relative to the bottom of the face. I already know that eventually we're going to have to move the bottom of the head in more, but for now, let's just get that relative to the eyes. To get clean brush strokes to where everything isn't so choppy, you can go into your tool settings, go into the stroke settings, and let's turn on a little bit of a lazy rope stabilizer and a little bit of stroke smoothing. The lazy rope stabilizer is going to give you this rope and no stroke will happen until you hit the end of the rope. That lets you get nice smooth brush strokes. Now I'll just carefully spend a little bit of time trying to get this masked off in just the right position for the mouth. Now that this is masked off, we're going to get this little inflated part here. We will use our inflate tool with a much smaller brush size, and we're just going to inflate this out right here. So just run over this a little bit and inflate it until it looks like it does in the photo. For now, I'm happy with this. We're going to fix it up and make it look better in the future, but for now, let's go back to the mask tool. And with this mask, if you tap off of the screen, you'll invert your mask so that this area here is the only unmasked part on the object. With that said, we will open the gizmo tool, and you can move this part straight back to make that mouth opening. So that you don't have hard edges inside like that, you can use the smooth tool while it's masked, and it's going to just soften all of those edges. Now we can go back to the mask tool, go into the mask settings, and click clear mask. We're gonna get that tongue in there. I will go into the scene menu, click add, and we're going to add a sphere for that. We can go into our color options, and we're just going to go into the reds and get a nice pink color. We can make that a little bit less shiny and paint all. Let's scale that down and move that into position of the mouth. And then once it's here, we can scale this down with this green dot at the top and further position it and rotate it and scale it whichever way you need to make it look like a tongue. I'm not so happy with the pink, so let's make it more red like it is in the photo. The eyes look more flat on the face where these are kind of bulging out of the head. I'm going to use the move tool, and looking from the side with a larger brush, we're going to drag this out and see if we can clean this up so that it's more flat on the face. That's a lot better, I think. And we're just going to continue to play with these shapes and make sure we have them right. All the while, we have to continuously look at the proportions and make sure everything is proper distances away. Let's add in these elongated spheres that act as whiskers. I'll go to the scene menu, click add. We're going to add a sphere. And again, we're just going to use the gizmo tool to position it and elongate everything and scale it down. As I'm adding these in, I realize the bottom of the eye is not in the right position. So if you look at the reference, the bottom of the eye is right about at the top of the inflated mouth part right here. I'm going to take the eyes and I'm going to move them up and make sure that bottom is right there with that. Now we can move the whisker close to the eye and then extending just past the eye. We'll click the clone button to move it down and rotate it, and then we can paint these a little. Let's go into the paintbrush, go into the eyedropper tool, and we'll try to grab that light orange color. To make sure these are on the same sides, like the same distance on each side, click the tube tool and click mirror, and then do that to the other one as well so that they're both inside of a mirror. I'm just going to use a very big move tool right now to try to continue to play with the shapes of the head until it more so matches the reference photo that we have. I'm going to be looking at the top of the head mostly, and a lot here on the bottom of the head. This needs to really scoot in closer so that it's not so wide. Maybe this coming in will help a lot. We can shorten the head on the backside so it's more rounded this way. We can squeeze it in on the top here. And I think just those changes alone are going to help a lot, but we want to continue to look and just make sure that everything is an okay size. I think this looks a little bit off. If we could maybe pull that out a little bit. And then I can see that the eyes are getting a little out of round if you look at the front. To fix that, I'm just going to use the move tool and make sure everything is pulled forward so that it lays flat on the face like we were talking about earlier. And then once I think I have that, I also want to look at the nose bridge. So you can see that it probably comes forward a little bit, and this one does not. So I'm going to grab that nose bridge and I'm just going to pull that forward so that we have a little bit of a slope right here. And then to make sure those eyes are round, I'm going to take a crease tool and make sure that it has a lazy rope stabilizer on it. And then with a smaller brush and a medium intensity, I'm going to take that crease tool and I'm going to go all the way around the eye to make a little bit of an indent on the outside edge and also just round that out and make it a nice smooth shape. It looks like he has a little bit of cheeks. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this whisker and I'll hold smooth to multi-select and grab the other one. I'm gonna use the gizmo tool and I'm gonna move these off the face for a moment so they're out of my way. I'll go back onto the face and with the inflate tool, with a pretty low intensity, 10%, and a medium-sized brush, I'm gonna inflate right under the eye and add a little bit of dimension into the cheek to try to inflate that out. And then just to make sure everything is smooth, I'm gonna go into the smooth brush with a pretty high intensity, and I'm gonna smooth all of this out just to make it a nice even transition. I'll go back to those whiskers, select them, and move them back onto the face. Let's click on the paintbrush, go into the paint menu, get the eyedropper, and let's grab our main color orange. And then I'm going to make that just a slightly lighter color and more saturated. Let's go ahead and find that color I'm looking for. And I think it might be this one. I'm just gonna change the whole body to that. And then we're gonna get this very light color and I'll just drag this up this way into the whites. And I'm gonna use a lower intensity brush. And then let's go ahead and start coloring in the face with a low intensity and just add a little bit of dimension to this. And if you smooth this out, it's also going to soften up those colors, but you need to be careful not to ruin any of your geometry on your model. I'm gonna click post processing and we're gonna turn this on so that we can start to get some nicer colors. This one is gonna blow everything out of proportion, but if we just go to standard, which you should also have in yours, you can see that it's gonna start making this very nice. We wanna edit this a little bit. I'm going to turn off reflection and global illumination. Our ambient inclusion, I'm gonna turn that, we'll put that right around there. We can turn off bloom, we don't need that. We can turn off sharpness and we'll leave anti-aliasing on. And that should be good enough for now. Let's go ahead and add in the body shape. I will go into the scene menu, click add, and we're gonna add a sphere. Now this will be part of the costume, so we can make this a lot more red. We'll make the costume portion later, but we're just gonna get the outline of the body and then later we'll turn it into a costume. We don't have to worry about that right now. We will click the paintbrush. We're gonna go into the colors and let's just get like a nice red color, very saturated. We'll just start there for now. And let's go ahead and go click on the tube. And then we're gonna validate our shape because we don't need to edit any of the normal topology of our shape before we validate it. For this, it's okay to just validate. Let's use the move tool and we're gonna start to get the main shape. We really have to pay attention to the proportions here. The head on this model is very big compared to the body. So the body is smaller than the head, I think. We're actually gonna take this and we're just gonna move it around with the move tool and we're gonna try to find the proper shape. The shoulders come in and the shoulders end about halfway into the eye. That's honestly about right. We're gonna have to get the shape of the body to come out this way and the stomach is kind of pudgy out here, so we're gonna move this out this way and then the body probably comes back in this way down here, so it's more of a body. We can use the tube tool with the path option and we're gonna lay a path out right here for the arm. We'll put that in and click the green dot to get it to show up. I'm going to close this menu so that we can see, but this is going to work as our arm, so we can move these points around. We can click on the paintbrush and we can click paint all so it can match, and then we can mirror it on both sides. This little yellow slider right here lets you change the radius, and if you click radius at the top here until 2 dots are showing, you can change the radius at the start and stop. Also, if you change it one more time till 3 dots show, if you have more points, you can change the radius at every point. We want this to be a very rounded hot dog-like shape like these. To easily do that, here's a little trick. You can open the topology menu, you can turn up your post subdivision to 2, and then let's turn our division X down until it's about 5 or 4. The lower you go, the less control you're going to have over the shape, but the more hot dog-like it's gonna look. If you're able to get the position you want out of this, lower might be better. But you can see sometimes it's hard to control this spline. It doesn't do exactly what you want. Let's see if we can get the shapes that we want here. And if we can, we're gonna keep the hot dog shape. I'm gonna go into the topology menu and I'm gonna turn the division X up to 5 because I'm not able to control it as much as I want. And this might honestly be just a little bit better. The arm doesn't even extend past the face, so keep that in mind and let's bring it out towards the front. We're gonna have to change the body. Let's go back into that and we're gonna have to move the neckline and the chest way in. We're gonna move this in like this. And we'll move the body in a little bit as well. Let's bring it down this way, like that, and we'll extend the stomach out this way. That way it can look more like this type of deal. I think the body needs to be smaller, so shorter, so we're gonna take that move tool and we're just gonna push the whole thing up. Let's go to the scene menu and click add, and let's add a cylinder. This is going to work as our base. We'll squish it down and we'll put it down here. This is just so we can understand how tall it's going to be and where on the ground it is going to sit. Because now we will go back into our arm, go into the tube, and lay out a new path and click the green dot to get it to show up. This will be our legs. Obviously these legs are different, but let's start in a mirror and then we'll go ahead and change those in the future. Let's find where those are gonna be, and if you see anything that's off, we can go ahead and move that as we continue developing our character. Just make those changes when you see them if they don't look right. For the legs, I'm gonna make these a little more flattened rather than rounded. I'll go back into my scene menu here, my topology menu with the 3 dots, and I'm gonna turn that division X up to 6. That will be better for this. And then we can go ahead and move those legs into position. We want this one to stick way out to the side, and it's gonna be very stubby. And we want it to actually come forward. We're gonna find the main location of the leg, which will probably be right there, and then we're gonna make it come out this way. It needs to be a lot thicker at the base, and then probably down here as well. And if you look, it looks like that leg might be a lot closer where it joins the body. It might be a lot closer to the arm. We're gonna try to shorten up the gap between the leg and the arm. Let's see if we can get this more like right here, which means that that body needs to get shortened up even more. We're gonna go ahead and do one of these. We wanna make sure that this is kicked out forward more, so we're just gonna rotate it that way, and then we can make sure it's rotated out this way. We want this to be separate now, so we'll go into our scene menu and find the mirror that it's under. So it's under this mirror. We want to go and close our scene menu so we can see, click tube so this menu can pop up, and this is for the mirror. We're gonna validate the mirror and uninstance so that these 2 objects can work independently from each other. So now they won't change each other. We can go and look from the side, and we can move this leg backwards and make sure it's touching the ground. I'm gonna move the floor up, and I'm just gonna position this appropriately. For this leg, I'm going to go ahead and continue to modify it. It needs to get moved a little bit, and we need to shorten it up because it needs to be off the ground a bit. Something like that maybe. Now, same for this arm over here. We need this arm to work independently. And I think we also validated the same mirror, so it already works independently. Now we can go ahead and shorten that up as well. That needs to come down this way, and it needs to be straightened up. Let's work on the face a little bit. Now that we have the basic outline here, I'm gonna click on the face, and we wanna get some resolution into this to make this look nicer. Go into our voxel menu, which is up here, and then it's this voxel tab. We can voxel remesh this. I'm gonna do this maybe around 200. The higher, the more resolution you have, but it's gonna be a bigger file and you'll use up the RAM on your device. So you need to make sure that you're within your limits and you don't wanna go too high too early. Even at 200, I have 156,000 triangles, which honestly is quite high, but that's okay. We're just gonna run with this anyways. I wanna make this look nicer, and I'm gonna smooth it now that it has a higher resolution. We're gonna make sure our intensity isn't too high. We don't wanna completely get rid of the detail. And we'll smooth the mouth too to round out the edges. That'll look much nicer when we do that. Now that this is smoothed out, I'm gonna take the inflate tool and make sure we properly inflate it this way. And if you turn back and look, you see that it's actually much more appropriate now. But we want this to be much sharper, this little crease in the center. I'll take the crease tool with a pretty sharp brush size and a pretty small brush radius. You can see I'm making sure the outside bands of this radius are kind of grabbing the edge of where I want it to start folding. And then we'll just crease in here, and that does a pretty good job. We want to lower the intensity. That was a bit too strong. And then we're just gonna lightly crease it right here. That should be good. We can do it a couple times to make it work right. And let's add the little triangle nose. For this, I'm just going to click the scene menu, click add, and we're just going to add a sphere. This will be the easiest thing. I'm gonna move it forward, move it down, scale it down, and get that into position. Then I'm gonna go into my color options in my color picker, and I'm gonna grab the same color as the whiskers, and then I'll paint the nose that color. That way everything kind of ties in. You can see it already is kind of getting that shape for me because it's kind of squeezing itself into all of the geometry here, but it's still just a sphere. I'm going to validate it and use the move tool, and we're gonna kind of push this back, and we will move these edges up and just kind of get that proper shape for the little triangle cat nose. I think that's good right there. We'll move it down just a tad. So gizmo tool and just move it down. And if you want, you could just spend a little more time with the mouth and just make sure it's properly inflated. Make sure it's how you like it. You can use the inflate tool and bring it out more. You can take the move tool and move it around, whatever you think it needs. If you need this to be more puffy, you can like pull that down right there. And then you can always voxel remesh again. If you're starting to move your geometry too much, you can voxel remesh and then smooth it out one more time to clean up all your geometry really, really nicely. I could really see cleaning this a little bit, and that would look very nice. I think now might be a good time to get the dragon hood of the costume. What I'm going to do for that is I'm going to take the head shape and I'm going to clone it so that I have two of them. I'm going to go into the gizmo tool and scale this up, and then I'm going to go into the paintbrush and I'm going to paint it the same red color as the rest of the costume. I'm going to use the brush tool with the subtract option, and we'll use like a 7% brush is what this is. You don't want to go too intense, but I'm going to brush away the inside of the face and just kind of make that the outline of the mask and try to bring it appropriately to where it needs to be all around the face, paying attention to how far off everything is from the face. I think already I want to use the move tool and I want to bring the top of the head up and out a little bit. We'll give it a little bit more volume this way, and we'll probably give it a little bit more volume in the back. I'm going to use the smooth tool just to kind of bring everything together and just make it very nice and smooth transition. No like hard edges or jagged lines where I was moving things around, just so it's nice and soft. I can do the same thing for the edges here where I smoothed everything in, where I used the brush tool. If I smooth this out, we're going to get some nice even transitions on those. Now I'll take the move tool and we're going to try to drag this off the front of the head a little bit so we create a little bit of a gap, maybe something like this. And we're going to use the crease tool once we get that where we want it on the bottom edge to separate it from the hat, separate the hood from the head. We'll run that crease tool in there and we're going to separate the two. See how that did? It separated those, and now if we want, we can take that big move brush and we can just kind of move it around a little bit more. We can get it a little bit closer to the head now if we need to, whatever you need to do to make it look good. I want the top to be more elongated. This is very flat. I'm gonna take the move tool and I'm just gonna drag this up this way and make sure it's a little more oval shape rather than flattened. And to make that look nice, I'm gonna have to move the head as well. But we're gonna put hair in there too, so we don't have to move it too much, but I think that will be good. Let's get these teeth first. I'm gonna use the insert tool right here, and I'll use a sphere, and right where I think they need to go, so I'm gonna pay attention to the eyes, and it's less than half. It's about 1/3 into the eye is going to be a tooth. I'll put that sphere there, make sure to mirror it, and then I'm going to go into the tube option and validate that sphere. I'll take that sphere and I am going to use the drag tool, and we're going to drag that out into a sharp shape, something like that, but a nice like rounded shape. It's not anything too crazy because it's just a costume. We're going to take the gizmo tool, and if your gizmo's not lining up like this, you can click align and that'll put it in the world symmetry line. We're going to squish it a little flatter and we're going to scale it down. We still don't want it to be that sharp, but we'll fix that in a moment. Let's go ahead and angle them or do whatever you have to do to make them look good on the costume. I might even get them just a little bit closer right there. And then with the inflate tool, I guess we can actually just go ahead and do that now. I'll go ahead and inflate this to make it a little more rounded, and that'll make it look very nice. Let's use the insert tool again for the sphere, and let's insert the eyes just to the right of the teeth. And we're going to click mirror to get it to go on both sides, and we'll use the gizmo tool. And you can actually click this little yellow circle in the center, and you can freely move this sphere in relation to your camera. We'll scale it down a little more and make sure it's properly positioned, and then we're going to go into the paintbrush with the color and make it straight black and completely shiny and paint all. We're going to make it smaller. We want it significantly smaller than our normal eyes so it doesn't draw too much attention. For these nostrils, we're going to go ahead and just copy this shape and drag it over and bring it up. We're going to elongate the spheres so that they go this way and just scale them way down. Just spend some time to position those with the gizmo tool and rotate them, do whatever you got to do. And I know they're shiny in this image, but I don't like them shiny, so I'm going to go into the paintbrush and I'm going to make them much more matte so that they don't have a shine to them. Now for the ears, I'll use a tube tool with the path option, and I'm going to lay that path out right here for the ears. And I'll move that backwards onto the head and make sure it's pushed into the head a little bit. I'm going to scale it up so I can see what's going on. And then to get this shape for the ear, I'm going to turn on my profile that changes it from a cylinder to a square. And you can further change that shape by clicking profile, and you have control over what that looks like here. I have some presets made, and I have this preset for this type of an ear. If you want to pause the video and look at this, you can make your shape look like this on the spline. Now that I have this shape, I'll go into the paintbrush, the eyedropper, and I'll get that same costume color and paint the ears that color. And I'm going to turn on radius until 2 dots show, actually until 3 dots show, so that I can make this thicker at the base, add another point here, and kind of round it out, and then make it sharper at the ear. And that's going to give me these cat-like ears. I'll click B-spline so that it averages out all of the points and makes it just a little bit nicer. There we go. I think this is about where I like it. But we want them to be smaller, and we want them to probably curl in this way a little. And we want the top not to be so sharp. We'll round it out in the future. We're going to scale the whole thing down quite significantly and move it a little more forward. Actually, they were better back here. And starting with this shape, we can go ahead and validate it. And then I'm going to use the inflate tool, and we can inflate around the edges. I had sub selected, so let's undo that. We can inflate around the edges just to make it more rounded and cat-like. Once you get to the top, it's going to break a little bit. All you have to do is voxel remesh, and then go into your smooth tool and smooth out the tip of the ear, and you'll get rid of a lot of that bad voxeling look. Make any further adjustments by using the move tool and just rounding everything out to how it's supposed to look. We need a little bit more room on the side of the head. I'm going to grab the move brush and drag this off the side of the face, and then I'll grab the side of the face and move that out in towards the costume. We're going to have to clean up the eye a little bit, but that's okay. We'll do that in the future. I'm going to use the crease tool to just crease along this edge and better define the edge of that costume. and then just use the move tool subtly to kind of equalize all of those bends and try to make it a little more uniform. Now let's get a couple of these horns on the top of the head. I'm going to use the tube tool with the path option, and I'm going to lay out a path right in the middle of the head just to get started. And I'm going to edit the topology of this. I'll turn the post subdivision up and the division X way down to about 5. We'll make it thicker here and turn on radius till 3 dots show, and we'll add a dot in the middle and get this to kind of go out this way. I'm going to turn this up to 6 because I'm having a hard time editing it exactly how I want it to go. We'll get it about right there, and we're going to make this thicker here. Try to round it out a little bit more. It's not wanting to do what I want it to do. I'm just going to turn off the post subdivision and turn the division X back up because, again, it's not doing what we want. And then I'm going to round out the tip of this later manually. I think I'm happy with this shape, so I'm going to go into the gizmo tool and clone it. Looking from the side, we're going to move it straight back and then tilt it. And we're just going to do this all the way down the back of the dragon costume. We'll do it just a few more times, maybe 2 more on the head, and then we'll do a couple down the back, maybe. Actually, we'll leave the back empty for now. Let's just do the head. Now that that's done, I'm going to go and I'm going to validate that shape, and then I will voxel remesh it. Let's do this at around 100. It doesn't have to be very high. I'm going to smooth out the tip of this to round it out. And I'll do that with all of these shapes. Ideally, I probably should have just done the first one first before I cloned everything, because then I wouldn't have to go in and do all of these separately. But I don't think ideally. We'll also go ahead and change the color of these just to make them a little bit on the yellow side. Let's get the dragon wings real quick. I'm going to take a tube tool with the path option, and we'll just lay out a little shape right here for the wing structure. We're going to align this to the back to where we want it to connect. We'll turn on mirror so that we can see it on both sides. And we're going to extend these out just to the edge of the head. I don't want to go too much further because I don't want it to come far outside of my base for the miniature that I'm creating. I'll go just a little bit outside of the base. We're going to make this droop way down. Make sure we click B-spline so that everything is pretty symmetrical, pretty nice. And we're going to make that droop way down this way. So we have this arc like that. I'm going to change the radius and make it just a little bit smaller. And then what I'll do is I'm going to go into the scene menu and clone this shape. Now there's 2 tube tools. I'm going to get rid of the first couple points for this one and then drag it down so that we can just easily have the exact position we need for this. And I'm going to make this shape right here. We're going to put that here and we're going to round that out a little, and it needs to be a smaller radius and probably back a little more so that we have a little bit more room for a wing. I'm going to clone that shape one more time, and we're just going to move that over this way and move it down, and we're going to have to go ahead and make this much shorter. Now what I'll do is go into the scene menu, click add, and we're going to add a box to work as the wing membrane in between the structure. We'll look at it sideways and squish it pretty thin, maybe right about there. And we're just going to move this down and over, scale it way down, and we're going to put that over the wing the best that we possibly can. It doesn't have to be perfect yet. Once we mostly have it, we're going to go into the materials panel at the top, click blending, and turn down the opacity so that we can see through it just a tad. We'll click on the tube function so we can validate our shape, and then we're just going to find our trim tool with the lasso function, and we're going to chop away all of this extra stuff that's sticking over the structure. And then in here, this is going to be the membrane. We're going to do little arcs in between each of the structure. We'll do an arc right here, and we'll do another between this one and this one, and then we'll do one last one between this. And then once you have all this, just make sure you trim out anything you missed. We're going to go ahead into the materials panel and make it opaque again. This is when we're going to use the drag tool, and we're just going to drag this around and make sure that we kind of move everything actually into the structure and everything lines up. You'll want to spend a lot of time here to make sure you get it perfect. If your object is too voxely and it looks bad, you can go into the voxel menu And let's up this to about 150 is fine, 134 is okay. And we can just smooth this out. And also smoothing to make these rounded look nice, just don't overdo it. My intensity is too high. So you can just round that out a little bit. And smoothing it will also thin it, so make sure not to make it too thin, but it does help if you're having a hard time making it line up. Now I'll go into the structure tube tools. I'm gonna validate those, and individually I'll voxel remesh them and take that smooth tool, and we're gonna round out the end by smoothing the end of it. The smaller the brush, the more sharp that's going to be, and straight to a point. Now let's go ahead and paint the wings the same color as the costume, like everything else, but we'll make the membrane just a little bit lighter like it is in the picture. Now we're gonna look at the stomach detail and try to get that. What we'll do is we're going to take the crease tool, and making sure that we have that lazy rope stabilizer on this still, we're going to go ahead and just slowly, we're just gonna draw that in there. So look at the picture and try to make sure you get it just in the right place, and we're just gonna make that shape for that color. I don't like exactly how that looks. It's not the right shape, so I'm gonna undo and just keep trying this until you get it just right and you're happy with it. That took me at least 40 tries, and don't feel bad if you have to pause the video to try to get that. Now let's get these straight lines across. There's only 2. So we're gonna get one right here, just start right at the edge, and just bring it right into the center, out to the other edge. And then we'll get one more. We're gonna get that down right about here. And I forgot to add some geometry into this. If you see, we have a very low resolution shape. What I'm gonna do at this point, since that happened, I'm gonna go into my voxel menu, into multi-resolution, and then I'm going to subdivide so that it can just smooth everything out and get even nicer. We'll subdivide one more time, and then I'm gonna go into my voxel menu, and I don't really work in multi-resolution, so I'm just gonna voxel remesh this to around 185. Let's just go 200, and then voxel remesh. Now this needs to be colored, so I'll go into my color menu, into the eyedropper, and we'll eyedrop that stomach color. And once you have it, you're gonna click on your paintbrush right here and zoom in very close, and just right up to that edge, you're just gonna wanna go ahead and paint everything. You can do this also with a lazy rope stabilizer if that helps you, just so you can get some cleaner lines and just spend some time to color that in very nicely. If you don't care about color on your model, you do not need to do this part. I don't particularly care about the color because I just 3D print all of my things and it doesn't matter, but for the purpose of teaching, I do color them. Now I see that the body's tilted a little bit sideways, so using the gizmo tool, I'm gonna move just the body sideways, and I'll have to align the head a little better. Again, that's just something we'll do in the future. I'm gonna wait until I'm fully happy with everything on the face, and then I'll go ahead and just tilt it sideways a little. Real fast, I'm gonna go ahead and select all of the wings, or every part of the wing, and then I'm gonna use the gizmo tool to make sure that it's in the proper position, because I might wanna move it up and over so that they're just a little closer together. And we can take this part of the wing and we're gonna move that down. I'm gonna take the drag tool and we're probably just gonna move that down, and we're gonna take the same for this and just kind of drag that down and make it extend a little further into the body. With every part selected, I'm going to go into the voxel menu or the scene menu and click join so that they all become one shape. That way I can take the move tool, or rather the drag tool, and I'm going to drag it out this way to make a little bit of a bend into the wings. That way they have a little bit of angle to them and it just looks a little nicer. Let's go ahead and add in the tail. To do that, I'm going to use a tube tool with the path option, and I'll lay out a simple path. Let's put about 3 points, and we'll click the green dot to get this to show up. And let's make sure that that's starting at the center, and we'll start changing all of our radius. I'm going to make the tail come out this way just a little so it peeks out over right under the middle of the wing. So we'll come out over here and we'll make it come back up. I tilted the body orientation to the right a little bit with the gizmo tool. Now I'm going to take the wings, go in my scene menu, and I'm going to click the mirror that it's under. Let's see what else is in here. These are all the wings. I'm gonna click the mirror that's with it, and I'm gonna tilt the mirror a little, and then we can realign this so that this is a little bit better aligned with the orientation of the body. That way it's got a little bit of a tilt into it. Now I'll take the tail with the body, and I'm actually going to take the legs as well because I think I'm done with them. And we'll also take the arms, all of those shapes together, and I am going to voxel remesh them as one object. This is gonna take, I'll turn on the wire. This is gonna take all of my separate objects here, and when I remesh them together, they're going to become one object with one mesh. This will allow me to go in with the smooth tool, and using a very high intensity, somewhere around 1000%, I'm going to smooth out the joints and make it look like one continuous shape. This will also get rid of all of the voxel looking textures, so make sure you smooth all of that out so you can make it look nice. I want to pay close attention to the leg joints because they're very continuous, but I want to make sure that I'm not removing all of these details in the body. So I'll zoom in close, and I'll make sure not to smooth out the body, but to smooth out the joint instead. Now for the hair, I'm going to go into the scene menu, click add, and let's add a cone shape. I'm going to drag it up and position it this way and rotate it down here. We're going to squish it in this way and scale it. I'll validate the shape and let's make it the proper orange color. And now I'll inflate the end of it to round that out a little. And let's undo that because we need to make sure symmetry is selected and make sure sub is not selected. And then we'll go ahead and inflate to round that out. And symmetry still wasn't selected. Now I'll voxel remesh and I'm gonna smooth everything out, and that should really make that nice rounded look that we're looking for, just for a piece of hair like this. I'm gonna better position this on the head, and now I'll just use the gizmo tool to clone that a couple times and move it around and reshape it just to have all my individual pieces of hair. I'll have this one right about here, but you see that it needs to be a little bit more rounded at the end and less pointy. I'll just take the move tool and push that in, and then I can use the smooth tool with a very high intensity and kind of round that whole thing out. For the bumps on the leg, I'm going to use the stamp tool, and I'm going to use an alpha map. If you want all of these alpha maps, look on my Patreon for the video that says Nomad Sculpt course for complete beginners, and I'll have all of my alpha maps listed in that video for free. In the geometry folder, I'm just gonna look for a circle dot, and I'll do one that's slightly soft, maybe this one right here. And then I'm just gonna look at the position of the dots, and at around 240% for this one, I'm going to put one in and just very lightly. You don't have to go too heavy because the more you go, the larger that is. Play with your intensity, make sure it's right, and then just put a few bumps in there wherever you like them. Using the inflate tool, I'm going to inflate the edge of the bottom foot so that I can make that kind of rounded out. I'm going to click solo that I'm seeing just the suit, and I'll go ahead and just run that inflate tool over the edge a couple times. And then I'll do that to the other foot as well, just right from the side over the front and just inflate that edge. One of the last things I want to do is I want to take these spikes and I'm going to clone them. I want to continue them down the back, and then I'm also going to continue to clone them and put them down the tail as well. I'm just going to make them very small. I want to take the hood now, and I want to take the body and voxel merge these together. Since this is part of the costume, I'm going to try to see what it looks like if I smooth them out. I'm going to click solo, and we're just going to smooth this heavily on the neckline. And I think that's going to look a lot better by doing this. We want to be careful right here between where these line up because we don't want to smooth out that joint. Actually, before I do this, we have to undo because I remembered something that we were going to do. We need to take the hood and we need to take the head, everything that's in the head. I'm going to select all of this in here, and let's unselect the body. Let's see what all is being grabbed. Everything is being grabbed. We need to go in our scene menu, and I have a lot of things being grabbed that shouldn't be, and I need to see why. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go into my settings menu and I'm going to click darken unselected objects so I know what is and is not selected. I'm going to select the face and then I'm just going to spend some time to multi-select every single object connected to the head. And then to make sure I got it all, I'm going to move the head just to make sure I got it. Now I'm going to do what I said earlier, which is tilt the head a little bit sideways, and it's still in the mirror, so I'm going to have to go in my scene menu. And for the eyes that are under the mirror, I need to grab this mirror with it, and I'm going to have to grab this mirror with it. That way the mirror also rotates. I have this selected, so I have to grab this mirror, these, so I have to grab this mirror, and this. That should be everything. And then let's move this to C, and that looks better. Now we can just tilt this way and position it back onto the center of the body over here. I'm going to turn off darken unselected objects so I can just see everything equally and just examine the shape and position and make sure I'm happy with how everything is lining up. I think I am, but now that I did that, I'm going to have to move this over some, and I'm gonna have to move the wing. I want it to just barely touch the head so that when I 3D print, it's going to have a bigger chance of not breaking or failing, especially handling the object, because it will have more support on the object, so less chance of breaking, less brittle. Now I think I can select the head and the body and voxel merge those together. We can take our smooth, and now we can smooth that out. One last thing I forgot, I'm gonna take the hood now, and I'm gonna take the ears. I'm gonna voxel merge those together as well, and I'm gonna smooth the back of them. This also looks like one shape. That way the ears kind of fit into the costume. Now we're done with the sculpt, but we need to optimize it for 3D printing. What I'm gonna do, time before I go to optimize, I go into the file menu and save this, make sure it's saved. I'm gonna click save as and save it as a new file. This way I can duplicate it. So if I open my files, you can see I have two separate files. Just in case I mess something up, I can still keep the original file and I can go and edit it in the future. Now, I don't care about the color for 3D printing, so I am going to select everything and go into my color options and just make it completely white with a little bit of roughness so that it's not very shiny. And I'm gonna look at the shape like this and make sure everything looks good. And because sometimes the color can kind of give you false information and you might have mistakes and not be able to see them. I think this looks good as is. I want to tie in the wings a little bit better back here, and I'm gonna do that after I merge. I'm gonna select every single shape except for the cylinder, and before I do that, actually we have to go to the mirrors inside of our scene, and just in case something messes up, we're going to go ahead and validate all of these mirrors and join them, because sometimes when you voxel merge shapes together and you're voxel merging mirrors into shapes that aren't mirrored, it's going to put the mirror on all your other shapes, and then it's going to throw everything out of proportion. It's going to mirror things that aren't supposed to be mirrored. We'll validate all those mirrors, select all of our shapes, and then in our voxel menu, remesh this. I'm going to do this around 400 and see if I keep all of the resolution. You want to pay very close attention once you remesh this and see if anything broke or looks weird. So nothing looks bad yet. This broke a little bit, but that's not a big deal. We can just smooth that out, not a problem. This broke a little bit, not a problem, smooth that. The wings look fine. They broke a little, but it's not bad. I think they're okay. We'll just leave those alone. Now, right here, where the wings merge into the body, I want to take this and I want to smooth this and make it really like it's one shape. In fact, I might inflate it and run it back this way so that it's just a little bit more muscle right there. We're gonna have to do it separately because the symmetry is off now. But I'll just smooth these out. In fact, I don't think I'm gonna go through the trouble of inflating it. let's just smooth it out because it's pretty well connected up here too, so we should be okay. Other than that, everything looks fine. Me personally, I make them on a very specific base, on this 1-inch base. And these are for my game miniatures for the Whimsical Warfare game that I'm creating. I'm going to get rid of this cylinder. I'm going to go into my scene menu and click add to scene. This will let me put in another object that I already have saved. And down here, I have my Whimsical Warfare base. I'm going to add that to the scene. This base was made in Tinkercad and it is exactly 25 millimeters wide. Now I can take my object, the cat, and I can scale this up, and I know that it's going to be scaled to fit on a 1-inch miniature base, so I'm going to have perfect scaling, no problem. I just have to size it to the base and make sure it doesn't go outside. So if I look from the top, I'm just going to position it on here and make sure it doesn't go outside of the base. I also make these on a display size, not just the miniature size for the game. That way, if anybody just wants the miniatures, you could buy those on my website. All that's linked in my bio if you're interested in supporting in that way. I'm gonna go into my scene menu and add to scene. I'm gonna add another base for the display miniatures. That one's right here. I'm gonna take this one and clone it out of the way so I have that for later. And then for this one, I can delete the base and I can scale this up to fit on here. I need to size this to a specific height. I'm going to take a measuring stick that I built. It's 3 millimeters by 63 millimeters, and I'll add that into the scene. And we're just gonna put that at the bottom of the toe. And basically how this works is I say that the top of the head needs to come roughly up to the top of the stick. That's about right. Right there's okay. We'll put that there and then we can delete this stick. I'm going to select these two shapes here and let's optimize the voxels for this. I try to get these as low as possible so that I have a small file size for transferring and just lower times on 3D printing, or rather slicing the 3D printing files and things like that. I am going to voxel remesh both the base and the body together. Let's do that again at 400 and make sure that I don't lose any detail. I'm gonna check very close. And the only reason you see these lines right here is because I have it scaled up very far. That's not a part of the model, so that won't look bad. Everything looks fine. Now our object is 441,000 voxels. But I'm gonna go into the scene menu and miscellaneous, I'm sorry, not scene, the voxel menu, into miscellaneous, and right around 20%, I'm gonna decimate this down to 20% of the voxels. We went from 400,000 to 87,000, and you just wanna look and make sure you didn't lose any details. So you can undo and redo and make sure everything looks okay. And honestly, everything looks just fine. I'll do the same for this big one over here. I'll select those together, click on the voxel menu, voxel remesh around 400 resolution. Make sure that everything looks fine. This is a slightly bigger model, so you really want to make sure this one looks okay because you're going to be seeing more of that resolution. As you scale it up, you need to make sure your details are even bigger. We'll go into our miscellaneous menu and decimate it down to 20%. And now both options are under 100,000 polygons, which when I export this, if I export as an STL, only the selected file, and export, this file size is only 8.8 megabytes, which is not bad at all. And that is the end of this tutorial. If you guys like this, check out this model on whimsicalwarfare.com. You should be able to buy the STL file, and let me know if you have any problems with it. I'm more than happy to help you along the way. If you get stuck, message me in my Discord, message me here on Patreon, wherever you need help.